This Choircast podcast is brought to you by the Quantum Gospel of Mary and the Lost Gospel of Truth by Keith Giles. For nearly 2,000 years, Mary Magdalene has endured attempts to erase her from the Gospel of John, suppression of her gospel text, and even false allegations by the 6th century Pope of being a prostitute. In this new book, author Keith Giles reveals the truth about Mary's gospel message and restores her prominence as the apostle to the apostles. Available now on Amazon.
Welcome to the Unbelief Podcast, your journey, actually our journey together beyond inherited beliefs to a spirituality that works for you. I'm your host, Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. We can fix that later, right? No? Damn. All right, welcome to another Drinks and Deconstruction episode. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Gabby.
And Gabby, I just out of love, Christian love for you, I feel like I need to tell you that I received a prayer request because some people are concerned you're going to hell.
Oh.
Because you are dating an unbeliever.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
I triggered.
Okay, so this is a thing that that people are taught. I was taught the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's the term? What's the term that is used in church culture?
Unequally yoked.
Unequally yoked. And just in layman's terms, like before you read the Bible verse.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
It means not to be in relationship with someone who does not have the same beliefs as you do.
Now, in relationship.
Honestly, I think it's used a lot romantically, but I think it also could mean like not to be buddies with someone who also is not a believer.
Why?
Because they can drag you probably away from the Christian faith. I think is the fear, right? That you guys will not, I think with a romantic partner, it's because you are eventually going to clash, right? Like what's going to happen when you want to raise kids and like if they want to be Christian or,
right.
Or also like that the fear is that person, I guess, is going to be stronger, and so like stronger than you, and so that they'll be able to like make you question your faith, pull you away from it, because the way of the world is dangerous, right?
And I think, I mean that I there's so many problems like with that. I mean, just like ignore the unbeliever, whatever.
Yeah.
The idea that. I mean, in that situation, you were talking sort of like a marriage relationship.
Yeah.
That a marriage relationship is a winner-loser, zero-sum game.
Right.
Right? That like, it is inevitable that you are going to fight about this.
Right. Yes.
And that in that fight, you are going to win or lose.
Yes.
Which is like unhealthy relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, it's assuming an unhealthy relationship that I think betrays this power, patriarchy, like one person is the head, the other person is the support, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
So I think it's the fear of all these things, and that, and mainly the fear of like, you don't want to be buddies with the world because the world is dangerous.
Right.
And so someone from the world is only going to drag you to hell.
And this is like also classic brainwashing technique.
Oh, 100%.
Separating people from other voices, from other critical voices. Like this is one of the things that like we have the only way. Everything else, anything that contradicts is different, is a danger.
Yeah.
So not just like think about it, but like it's a danger. So beware, do not engage.
Yeah. Yes, very much so.
Yeah. And okay, so do you remember when Do you remember any time you heard that specifically, like any story of that for you?
Of someone telling me not to be unequally yoked? Yes, I will share. So, when I first started dating my boyfriend, who is an atheist.
Now, when you started dating him, so you were full deconstruction at that point?
Yeah. So I would say when I started first liking him was when I began my deconstruction. Okay. So everything was new, right? We'd have a lot of discussions where he would have valid points and I would try to use my Christianese in answering him or things I just didn't have answers to, like, things about the world. I'm like, well, I actually don't know.
Right.
And so we would talk a lot about religion and whatnot. So honestly, it actually took a while for us to date because I knew that he was an atheist and I still ascribed to Christianity. I was like, well, we can't ever be together. Like he's not a Christian. Like we're going to be unequally yoked and nobody in my community is going to approve of this, no matter how much I like him. And like he had to me was way nicer than other Christians that I met, but actually was moral to me, was someone who was just treating me with like empathy, respect, and like cared about me. And I feel like that was hard. I don't know, for me at least, was hard to find. And I remember the beginning when we were together, I was like, okay, in my head, I'm like, we're a situationship because no one can possibly know that we're together.
And for people who are too old to know what situationship means,
we're not an official relationship. We were exclusively seeing each other behind closed doors. I don't know how else to say, like a situation that wasn't defined.
Yes.
We were, or at least in my head. In his head, he was like, oh no, this is my girlfriend. But I was like, no. Anyway, so once I got more comfortable, like I realized, okay, we are officially, like, we decided boyfriend, girlfriend. This is probably now a whole year after we got together. I started telling people. Okay. I didn't post anything on my social media. Like I was very private about it because one, I didn't want people's judgment. Like I knew they'd be like, is he a Christian? And then when I have to say no, they'd be like, what are you doing? Because whatever. So I was like, you know what? It's been a year. Maybe people will actually, if they hear about who he is, they won't actually say that to me. And I remember I shared with he used to be my youth pastor, that we've now grown close friends with. We were close friends, and I shared with him, like, I'm dating someone. And when he asked me about his religious beliefs and I said he's an atheist, the first response was like, break up with him. Like, what are you doing?
Wow. Like nothing else. Just
nothing
straight
else.
To break up.
Yeah, break up with him. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is not going to work out. Like, like, it's like, I shouldn't have to tell you this, but like, like Christian and a non-Christian is not going to work out. What's going to happen in the future when you want kids, when you want to raise them? Like, this is just going to clash. Like, what are you doing? Like, don't do this. And so, of course, after I heard this conversation, like, it already was hard for me this is why I didn't want to share with anybody, because of this response.
Yes.
And of course, I'm crying after it. Like, and this is making me now like, oh my God, am I doing the wrong thing? Maybe I shouldn't be dating him. Like, is he right? Like, I was struggling so much and like trying to navigate how I felt, and like, because for the longest time, I feel like as Christians, we're told, at least in my circle, emotions are bad. We're not supposed to trust them. You're not supposed to trust your intuition, right? Like,
your heart is deceitful above all things.
Oh my God, that verse has been replayed over and over again. So I'm like, okay, so how can I trust myself? Like, I'm supposed to ask an authoritative figure. God's supposed to choose my husband for me, right? Like, this is too much pressure for me to do this,
right?
Or to choose a partner, whatever. And so it was really difficult. And actually that conversation and me crying after all that is when I started going to therapy. I was like, I need someone to talk to about this because I'm deconstructing in private. I'm dating this person that I really love. And like, I was having a hard time just grappling with like what my community says versus how I feel.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, there's all sorts of layers, but, I think one of the things that's important to say, I guess, from me to you, is that this unequally yoked bullshit is problematic on all kinds of levels. One of those levels, though, is that it assumes marriage.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
That whoever you are dating, you have to treat them as a potential marital partner, lifelong, monogamous, blah, 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 blah.
Literally, yes.
Right? But that's not what dating is.
Right.
Right?
But that's not what we're taught, right? We're always taught, like, you need to date with intention. Oh my gosh. Actually, you just brought up a lot of memories. when they tell you like you're supposed to date with intention, right? Like actually a lot of people would court in my community. Like
what is courting?
So instead of dating, I guess, because modern dating is mixed with, I guess, sexuality, and the church doesn't like that.
Yeah.
Courting is more of like, honestly, I can't explain you the difference, but from what I understand is maybe like getting to know you and it's really just another term. Like, of course, they don't engage in any type of like sexual practice before marriage, but just
Not even like not kissing, not holding hands.
No, literally
like,
no.
It's not dating. It's like I'm getting to know you, and then I will, in the absence of any sort of physical contact, I will then propose to you.
Yes.
We will get married, and we will kiss for the first time
at the wedding,
at the altar.
I have friends who literally did this, and I saw their first kiss at the altar,
So, but the thing is like dating has so many functions in our culture and psychologically. Like, you can't know fully how to what you want in another romantic partner without having had some romantic partners.
Right.
And like maybe you will be one of the like very tiny minority of people that will meet one person, fall in love, marry them, and be married for the rest of your life. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But so it helps you understand what you want in a partner. And it also helps you learn how to communicate in that kind of a setting. But the other thing, and I think maybe even the most important thing, is dating somebody, especially as you progress and date in a more committed way.
Yeah.
It helps you learn more about yourself.
Literally, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you grow as a person and as a potential partner for someone.
Yeah.
The more you date people. And this short circuits that in this such a toxic way.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there are all kinds of things that people do, both in the church and out of the church, that also are not helpful when it comes to like romantic relationships. And then, and then there's also the physical romance side of things that, again, you don't know what you want or how to engage in that. And oftentimes the first time that you are in that sort of, in that side of a relationship, you don't know how, you don't know what, like, you don't know what you want, like any of that. And you don't know how to deal with the emotions that are created out of that. And so it's just not primed for the growth that, I feel like people need in order to be good partners. Right?
No, I completely agree. Everything you said is spot on. Like, how can you possibly know what you want in a partner if you're told, one, you can only date a certain pool of people, which are Christians, which I understand, like, why people say, like, okay, sure, it can make things easier. But I also think there's a lot of beauty in diversity. Like, when you have actually different opinions and you come together to talk about them, I don't know. I think I've definitely come around a lot of my thinking about relationships after I've myself have dated someone who's different than I am. And I was so scared of being with someone who's not the same views as me. And like, I'm actually this is really beautiful. And I love this.
Did you date people before you were unequally yoked?
I did. So I was on the Christian dating apps, specifically the Christian dating. I was on Upward.
Upward.
And I was on Holy. It's called Holy now.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was on another one. Some other one that I paid for. Mm-hmm. I was on Christian Mingle for a bit too.
A Christian Mingle. Okay.
Gosh. And I would see people's profile. We would date. And like every single guy had a problem. I can tell you, it was 3 people. It was not that many. But the first guy was like, yeah, like I'm machista. And like straight up told me he struggles with, which basically means like, the machismo culture is very much like patriarchy dominant. I'm the head of the house. It's what I say versus over what a woman says. I'm like, I am not about that.
And like, even like sometimes like punishing your wife.
Yeah, like, right. I was like, well, thank you for telling me this, but this is done. So done. I'm like, this is not going to work.
Peace out.
Yeah. The next person I dated, straight up, like on our first date, was telling me, like, he basically said that what happened with George Floyd was awful, but in the sense of like, he was a terrible person and deserved to die because like I was like,
no.
Yeah, I said, do I need to explain like systemic injustice and like all these things? And like he was like, yeah, like, and he was like I didn't know he was an ex-cop. Had I known that, would have not gone on the date with him, you know. But he was just like, yeah, and then he basically was saying stuff like, oh, that's so gay. I'm like, excuse me, that's very homophobic language. So there was like, he basically was a racist homophobe and like using the N-word.
Oh my
and I was like, sir. He's like, well, I'm Egyptian. I said, absolutely not. Not you dogging on the black community, and now you're using the N-word. We're not. So I was like, this is done for. Then the next person I dated, this was
these
the guy.
Were all Christians.
These are all Christians.
Okay,
these are all Christians. They look. They supposed to.
Well, I should say. Let's back up. These are all people that label themselves Christian.
As Christian, yes. Right. So I'm like, okay, these are the people I'm supposed to be dating.
I would not say that racist homophobes are necessarily following Jesus, but go ahead.
No, right.
Number three
was a pastor. Okay. And so I was like, this is the best I'll ever date. I truly, I swear to God, I truly believe that. And that made me ignore so many red flags because of his job. I was like, he's a pastor. Like, I win, right? I'm going to be a pastor's wife. Like, he knows the Bible really well. Yeah. Like, he's supposed to be an exemplar man of God. But when I tell you that this man was the most narcissistic person I have ever met,
oh my gosh.
He was awful, like treated me terribly. Like, you know, we would be like, he would ghost me a lot, like just wouldn't put energy into like us dating. Was like, oh, and he didn't even consider us dating. He said we're discerning whether or not we should be together. Okay. So, and then we spoke to a whole pastor about it. Like, we went to a oh my God, such cringe behavior.
He took you
to another pastor
to
see
what did you do in that meeting?
Well, he basically was like, we should go get advice, counsel from a pastor to see if we should be together, because he wanted to stay in Long Island, where I'm from, and I at the time wanted to be a missionary. He's like, I want to be international. Should we be together if we have different whatever? And so, and honestly, I didn't even like him. If I'm really real honest, I just think I was trying to gas myself into having feelings for this person because he's a pastor. And of course, thank God the pastor was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. After we told him, like, we had different, he was like, this is probably not a good idea that you guys date.
And so did you just say, okay, bye?
You know, so we're like, okay, it's probably best that we don't like, yes, we stop. So we stopped talking, stopped seeing each other. And then that was that.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is insane.
Yeah, I had some crazy experiences.
Wow. I'm just like kind of blown away. Like, these are so over the top.
Are they? I feel like a lot of people
it feels to me over the top that like your three people were at that level. Yeah. And so let's read the Bible.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
So what is the verse?
So I had this memorized. The unequally yoked verse is 2 Corinthians 6:14.
Yeah, like when we said, oh, let's do this, you're like, oh, 2 Corinthians 6:14.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like you had to look at, like, you knew it.
Because the way that I would sit here and memorize this and highlight it and underline it and just be obsessed with these verses, because I'm like, okay, I have to be with somebody. It was so ingrained in me. Like,
and I'm going to, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
This verse is in no way about dating.
Oh, great. I'm sure.
I cannot wait to tell you about this verse. Yeah. Okay, so 2 Corinthians 6:14.
Yes. So it says, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?
Okay. Now, can you expand this to a little bit more context?
Like, keep reading?
No, like it starts... there. Start at the beginning of the paragraph and then read sort of to the end of the section.
Okay, so start again?
Yeah.
Okay. So, do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christ and Belial? What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God, and as God has said, I will live with them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore come out from them and be separate, says the Lord. Touch no unclean thing, and I will receive you. I will be a father to you, and you will be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty.
Oh, keep going to the end of that.
Since we have these promises, dear friends, let us purify ourselves from everything that contaminates body and spirit, perfecting holiness out of reverence for God.
Yeah.
Keep going?
So, okay, that's the NIV. That's the version you grew up with. I will just read the beginning of that in the sort of more accurate translation.
Okay.
The New Revised Standard Updated Edition. It says, "Do not be mismatched with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and lawlessness have in common?" Okay.
Okay.
So not too far off.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Corinth. Corinth is a metropolitan city. It is a city of trade. It is a very wealthy city. I think if you are trying to imagine Corinth, you are going to think of Manhattan.
Okay.
Or a place that might be a big trade hub like San Diego, maybe not, but San Francisco. These are like big metropolitan cities with lots of different types of people in them. It's also a center of trade and business. And so this is the people in the church in Corinth are wealthy, and they are dealing with the issues that wealthy business people deal with. Because it's a city that has all of those things that I just mentioned, it also has lots of temples to other gods.
Okay.
And so, you know, if you believe that like my God is the right God, or my God is the most powerful God, or whatever, it's important for that God in this culture to bless your business dealings. Okay. So I think one of the clues, if you're reading this and trying to just read it on the surface, I'm just going to read something. Let's see. I'm going to read this one little section. What agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God. As God said, I will live in them and walk among them. I will be their God. They shall be my people. Therefore, come out from them and separate from them, says the Lord. But the part I really want you to hear is, what agreement has the temple of God with idols? So when you hear that, what sort of comes to mind? The temple of God with idols.
Probably because I know we or Christians will refer to idols as anything that takes priority in your heart over God. And so it could be anything that you...
Okay, so you're going into the metaphor.
Yeah.
You're interpreting it. But I want you to go back from interpreting and just think temple of God and idols. What are those two imagery for people in this moment? The temple of God would be literally
the temple of God?
Yeah, that would be the temple in Jerusalem.
Right, okay.
Okay. And then idols would sort of refer to other religions.
Okay.
So in the Jewish temple, it was completely unique in the ancient world in that moment, because you could not have any image of a person in the temple. There were no faces, there were no arms, there were no abs, which is prevalent in the idols.
Yeah.
Right? There is nothing. There were no images, to the point that like the image on coins of Caesar were not allowed in. You had to exchange your coinage for temple coinage so that you could go and pay the things you had to pay for.
Okay.
So this is important because the distinction here between temple of God and idols, right? All the other temples have idols. All the other religions have idols, and they're idols of their God, right? So we're having the distinction between the God of Israel and all other religions. That's really what that distinction is, which does not talk about me in my brain or my partner. More likely, what is happening here is in that culture, when you made business deals, when you agreed to be the supplier for this thing, that person would want to ratify that with their God, right? And so in a lot of these business dealings, you had to sort of ascribe to their God or go and make an offering at their temple to their God, right? And sort of engage in the worship of another God to do this business deal, right? So you are yoking yourself, like you are in a contract with someone who is of another faith that is requiring you to worship another God. Now,
I see.
Could it apply to marriage? Yeah, but that's not the problem in this moment.
Yeah.
Right? The problem is that that they are addressing is that like they are in this world, and the worship of those gods involved all kinds of things that would be seen as like immoral for Christians.
Yeah.
And so the idea was like you're compromising your faith and your morality for business.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. It's not that you could never have a business dealing with that person, but like, don't be unequally yoked. Don't worship their God. Don't engage in their immoral practices or whatever, so that you can get the deal. Right.
Right. So nothing about romantic relationships at all. This is,
and it's interesting when you read Corinthians, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, through this lens of a super wealthy culture, wealthy people dealing with the problems of wealth.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like, there's all kinds of other meanings that you can get from this. And while I am a person that is like really fine with people reading the Bible and the metaphor and letting themselves hear what they need to hear, when it's something damaging, right? When it's something that sort of completely goes against things that are like psychologically healthy and physical, like then that's where I draw the line, right? So
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it's okay. I feel like it's a journey for a lot of people who have to unlearn this thinking that I feel like is so widely spread in church or in these different groups. I mean, you were even mentioning about like someone being like, you're dating a future, like for example, I was just thinking about stuff you said earlier. Like people would be like, well, you got to be careful when you are going on dates with someone. This is when I was in my Christian circle. Like you want to make sure you don't share too much emotionally or like damage them because that's someone's future husband. It's like,
yeah. I mean, but you should not try to emotionally damage anyone.
No, true. Right? But they meant it in like, you don't want to, like, you need to have. If you get
too close, so you have a hard breakup.
Yeah. Like, you don't want to violate emotional, because then there's like, okay, we have physical boundaries, which, right, of course, you understand not supposed to have sex before marriage. But then like, you have to have emotional boundaries. Right. You can't just share everything with this person because you don't know if they're going to be your partner or not. Right.
Which sets you up for your relationship. From the beginning, the pattern is hiding.
Right.
Not being vulnerable. And listen, you don't need to dump on the first date. Right. That's also an unhealthy thing. But like the fact that like at some point you're going to meet the threshold and we're not going beyond here. I'm going to hide all of this stuff from you. And then what is it? Like you get married and then you find out all the trauma.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is that you've been hiding. But most likely you won't. Right? Because you've set up this pattern of hiding and not sharing. Yeah.
I feel like there's one and two. I would hear like, okay, let's set emotional boundaries. But then what I also would see is like, okay, we need to share our testimonies so that you know everything that's happened with me.
Right.
And I know people who would share their stories with it was a girl sharing a story with a guy, and when she told him that she wasn't a virgin, he was like, I don't want to be with you because like you're like used up goods and like you're not a virgin.
Oh my gosh.
And like that really was hurtful.
Yes, of course.
Like, so I'm just
which is damaging. I mean, obviously it's damaging in that relationship. It would be damaging if you said it to anybody.
Yeah, like what do you mean? Like, and I had back then friends with this mentality of like, no, I can't be with a girl who's not a virgin. Like, and I'm like, so is it insecurity on your end that you like? Well, I just can't have her comparing someone else to me. It's just like. What?
Right. That's
I'm like
that's not helpful.
Right. So I like,
and this is another episode, but virginity is like part of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Part of the way that men, systematized and wielded power over women. But we don't have to go in that.
Right.
Right. But I think this unequally yoked thing, it's like and it's part of the whole system of brainwashing, of getting you into a place where you think this is the only possible correct view of things.
Absolutely. And I think also I remember my best friend and I, when we were trying to date when we were in DC, and we like we're just saying like it feels very limiting to be dating people within the Christian pool. And once we started to like deconstruct, we're like, okay, we feel like we have way more options now. Like, like it was so hard to find people and people we connected with, because I'd always tell my friends, I think something's wrong with me. I never have genuine feelings for Christians. I always connect with non-Christian people. Right. I'd always develop crushes on people who were not Christian. I'm like, is something wrong with me? Like, why is this happening? Yeah. And so I remember us being like, it's way more freeing. There's way more options. Like, it was just, unequally yoked really set my, I feel in the beginning, right, to date, I wouldn't date certain people. Same for my other friends, like, because we weren't finding someone who had the same viewpoints. And when we did, it was like, oh, but they're not the same denomination. Like, oh, he's Orthodox Christian. Can't date him. Oh, he's Church of Christ. Like, that's too, like, that's different from ours. Like, he's not non-denominational. Like, oh,
so we're like shrinking down further and further and further.
Like, be like, oh, for example, my friend would come back after a date and be like, well, he believes that the only way to show like evidence of the Holy Spirit is speaking in tongues. I don't have that theological point of view. I don't think we can date. So it's just like, it's hard because you don't have the same, it had to be like the same viewpoints on everything.
Yeah.
And
then like you're not learning how to live in relationships with people who don't agree with you. And that's your whole life.
Yeah.
Nobody is the same as you. Yeah. Okay, so obviously you've let go of that.
Yeah.
Have you totally let go of it?
Of the unequally yoked?
Yeah. Like, have you, is it still back here?
Truthfully, I feel like I have 90% let go of it. I think there is still some sort of subconscious, like, are you sure? Are you okay with this?
Right.
And I feel like I get more sure when I meet other Christians or people who are practitioners of Christianity. They're like, like this is, I think once I see it more normalized in my community, I will be like 100% like, oh yeah. I think I am mainly there, but there's always stuff in the back of your mind that it's like speaking to you.
Yeah. It's so hard for all top to bottom with all of the purity culture stuff. So I think from your perspective, having lived through that, deconstructed that, what would you say to the younger Gabby who is listening to the podcast, who is on TikTok, whatever? Yeah. What do you say to her who is struggling with this unequally yoked thing?
I would tell her, like, it's okay to have feelings for someone. Like, stop denying them and stop, like, pretending like you don't like someone. Let yourself feel what you feel. It's normal. And be open to what could come. And, like, just open your, like, heart to seeing, like, what this person could offer, whatever feelings you have. Like, don't shove them down and keep them quiet, because that's what I would do anytime I had a crush on someone who wasn't Christian. Like, I know I can't feel this way. Go fast for 10 days, you know, like go do something fast to purify yourself again. Cause why are you having feelings that are not okay, you know?
Yeah.
So I would tell the younger self it's okay to feel what you feel.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, we're going to do a little segment here at the end just for fun, like a media, book, movie, whatever recommendation, something that's like is helped you or that you just feel like everybody should experience this or read this.
Absolutely.
Or see this, like TV show, movie, whatever.
I'm going to recommend a book because in my deconstruction that I'm still currently on, books really help me understand just the things that I've gone through. And this one book it was the first book I read in my deconstruction. It's called When Religion Hurts You by Laura E. Anderson. And it says at the bottom, Healing from Religious Trauma and the Impact of High Control Religion. Yeah. This book was excellent. She herself grew up in like a very conservative, evangelical, like neighbor, like area, family, you know, her culture. She has a PhD in psychology and she looked at the effects of like religious trauma. I love her. Her name's Laura E. Anderson. She has an Instagram where she also is active and constantly like posts stuff about just
that's great.
deconstructing. Honestly, a big segment of her book talks about purity culture and deconstructing purity culture. Like she opens up with like how when she was dating, like stuff that she experienced that were just very relatable, stuff pastors told her that she couldn't do, like how they basically made her break up with someone she was dating because they weren't, you know. So and she also talks about like complex trauma and like how like being in religious spaces that are very high controlling like this can cause you to have trauma and how to deal with that, right? It was just such a great book, and she definitely hits on purity culture for like I think a couple chapters, so definitely recommend reading that.
Okay,
what about you?
I've got one, and this book is a book I feel like everyone should read, even though the author is a little problematic right now. And I know that it's a book that people were actively told not to read who were in these sort of fundamentalist evangelical streams.
The Kumasatra. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yes, right. Yeah, that's also one. But it's part of the human canon at this point, I feel like, because it's like Shakespeare or whatever. Right. I feel like it is, there's something in it that resonates deeply on a deep human level. And I think that's part of why it is what it is. It's actually the only book to ever, and it was just in one quarter, but to ever outsell the Bible.
Oh?
Yeah.
Wait, what book is this?
This is Harry Potter. The Harry Potter series.
You said problematic, and I'm like, is he talking about the author of Harry Potter?
Yes, I am. J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Problematic. She has some views about the trans community that's not helpful.
Yeah.
And that's a whole debate about whether the art can transcend the artist.
Yeah.
Because there's musicians who have made great musical work that turn out to be horrible people.
Yeah.
However, it's something that, like, as a human, I feel like who lives right now, you need to know it. It's referenced. It is part of the way people think about the world.
Yeah.
And I find in those books a lot of life and a lot of like the way, sort of a lot of lessons in the way I approach things. So one of the things that Harry does is, and this is a common thing that people of that age do particularly, but there's big problems. Like, each book is kind of an adventure, a massive thing that needs to be uncovered and then solved. And Harry will often not tell other people what's going on, and will often not seek the advice and help of more powerful wizards.
Yeah.
And then when he's in the thick of it, he generally begins the process of dealing with whatever the problem is with his two best friends, right? Ron and Hermione. But he leaves them behind. right? And this idea that you have to, in order to be successful, in order to that you have to solve the problem by yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not helpful.
It's not.
And every time I do that, now, like, I actually think about Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to make Harry's mistake.
Right.
Right? And there's a million things like that. There's a whole piece that really unpacks racism.
Yeah.
And all of that in there from an imaginary viewpoint that helps. I don't know. I find that when we're talking about house elves and humans,
yeah,
it takes some of the heat off of the issue and maybe some of the taboo, where you can see it a little bit more clearly and process your own reactions in a different way, because we're not talking about queer people and straight people, or black people and white people, or whatever. And so anyway, I would say if you grew up with Harry Potter off limits,
I did.
Go right.
Yeah.
Go read it first. Don't watch the movies. Read it first. If you've watched the movies, also read it. I love the movies. I love the books. So go, and you might go to hell for reading it, but that means almost all the people are going to hell.
Right.
Right. Okay. So yeah, and we talk about all this stuff together in our Not Church group. Like, we have a whole area that we talk about purity culture and all this kind of stuff, processing our stories, and so it's a great place for you if you are a person that is not really sure about God or religion or what you believe, but you also want a supportive spiritual community as you're figuring it out. It's called Not Church, and $3 a month. You can go to patreon.com/skepticpastor, patreon.com/skepticpastor, and subscribe there. I think you'll love it. And if you don't, just stop subscribing. It's only $3 that you lost. And then you should tell your friends about this podcast.
You should.
Right?
I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
I send it to my friends all the time.
So tell your friends. That helps, as well as sharing stuff online and writing a review, giving us all the stars. All that stuff really helps. That's it. That's the podcast. Shout out to the Choir Network, to Patheos, to Matthew and Keith, who make everything happen. Now, get out of here. Go do something to make the world a better place. Okay? We'll see you next time.